So I was hoping I would get a chance to work on one of these, and before I got too far ahead of myself, I wanted to just stop for a second. I watched a video a few months ago. I like to go to other creators' channels just to see what type of mindset they have whenever they do repair videos and stuff like that, and if they just cut right to the, cut right through the bullshit and just get right to the repairs and stuff. A lot of guys do a lot of unnecessary stuff. For instance, this is a 2.5 liter 2010 Fusion, 2.5 liter motor, front wheel drive. This was one of the best Fusions they ever made. This is the best Fusion body style they ever made. I think it's the sportiest. The front end looked the coolest. The back end looked the nicest. That had the nicer rims and stuff on it than these newer ones. This Fusion was the best Fusion, in my opinion, that they made. These motors had 160, 200, 240, 300,000 miles on these Fusions. There was something between 98 and 2010 when Ford really had their act together. The Panther platform cars, the Fusions, the Explorers and stuff like that. They just kept running and running and running. With the exception of some of the 3-valve motors, there was no real problems. The phaser problems was about the extent of what they had. But I was watching a guy do a valve cover gasket on one of these motors, and I said, you know what, hold up. It's super simple to do this. The guy was trying to fish all kinds of stuff through the harness and everything else, and I think this dude had like 30,000 views or something, and I popped up on his channel and I said, man, I know you do this on the side. I know you're a shade tree guy, and I don't have any problem with that at all, but you're making that super complicated on yourself. All you have to do is come through, unplug your injector harness, unplug your coil packs, unplug your knock sensor off to the side, undo your little clips on each corner, and then you literally lay the harness back out of your way. Unplug your crankcase tube and that valve cover, pull your coils. And now you've got the whole entire valve cover exposed. You got your bolts all the way around the outside, 8 mils, pop the cover right off. Pull your dipstick tube, you're done in 15-20 minutes. Me not recording, I'm done in 10 minutes. I could have this job done in 10 minutes, no problem at all. It took this guy like an hour and 15 minutes to do this, and I was like, I just want to share some knowledge with you. And he got real offensive about it and stuff like that, and he didn't want to listen to it. So I figured I'd make my video and show you guys how I do it, and how I show you one of the most respected Fusions in my eyes. This vehicle, it rode great, had a ton of power. The 4-cylinder got a ton of miles. This 2.5 liter was almost bulletproof in these things. You get your little oil leaks and stuff from time to time, but that's the extent of it. You could have this whole entire dash out of here, the seats and everything out of here, the center console, in a matter of 2 hours. This car would be gutted. Guys that really love these cars and knew these cars, this just gutted. Wouldn't have to do anything. Just have everything pulled out, ready to start working on outside of the vehicle, and slap it all back in. You could have the whole entire interior of this vehicle ripped out and put back in, cleaned and detailed in 4 or 5 hours if you were on your shit, this thing. I mean, this was just an amazing car. It had the sportiest look. I love the way the lights and the rear end were laid out in this thing. It was just a nice car. It rode nice. The interior felt good. It wasn't this cheap, thin leather stuff like we have today. It's pretty thick, really plush stuff. It was just a nice riding vehicle. It's not as noisy as today's Fusions and stuff like that. They don't make this quality anymore. So while we're here, I'm just going to go ahead and pull that valve cover gasket and stuff off of there. The part number for the valve cover gasket. S7Z6584BA. It's just Series A, mills all the way around. You get a couple in the center, pull them out, pop your valve cover off. Simply one of the best motors ever produced to be put in a Ford 4-cylinder vehicle right here. Even the newer 2.5 and the Fusions are excellent vehicles. No sludge buildup, crystal clean motor. It's these newer motors, these boosted motors that have a lot of the sludge buildup. A little bit of varnish here and there, but this motor is like super clean. Overall, I'm really impressed with what it looks like inside this motor. For it to have 163,000 miles and just that little bit of stuff, specific areas, but overall, no crazy hashing on the cam lobes, no nothing, no sludge buildup, just a little bit of discoloration from here and there, but overall, That's a pretty damn clean motor. The fluid, super clean fluid. Somebody took pretty decent care of this motor overall. Now I see vehicles that come into the shop with 18,000 miles on it. One of my most recent videos had 3 oil changes, sludge all over the place, sludge in the cylinder heads, piston domes almost completely between the ring glands coked up and covered and carboned up. This 163,000 miles looks 1,000% better than these brand new boosted motors. They just don't have the issues. They don't have the problems. They don't have the blow-by. These were clean motors. They just ran. Anyway, now let's put it back together. See how easy that was? Just lay that harness up out of the way, make sure everything's blown off the top of the engine, and just pull your valve cover off, change everything, slap it back together. It's that easy. So what I did was I took a little dab of Ultra Gray and put it where the front cover meets the cylinder head. Right there and right there. And then I also took a light, just a real light ring of Ultra Gray around the top. This whole valve cover comes with the seal. Now if it was my vehicle, I would buy it. It's not my vehicle and I didn't get the approval, so I'm going to just put a little line of silicone right around that. Now obviously before I started this, I wiped all that off. You're not going to get all the varnish off of it, but as long as you get it clean, and I spray the rag with some brake clean and go wipe it down, and I'll put everything back down. Now you can see what it looks like after it's set. I kind of went around and just kind of brought that over the top of that seal right there, just to kind of dress it up. And I'll take up for any gap. I cleaned that seal out real good before I put any of that on there, so when I slid it down, it kind of uniformly ran up against the solenoid, and then I was able to just real nice and evenly clean it up and dress it up to make it look like it was kind of supposed to be that way. So that won't leak anymore. I'll let it sit here and dry overnight, so I won't mess with it. And then you can see a little bit of my push out right there in the corner where the front cover goes together. That's where that little dab of silicone was at. And now I'll just go through and tighten everything down, put all my harness and stuff back. And that's it. That's all she wrote. It's that easy. Whenever you go to take the sensor out here in the middle, pull back on your rubber boot first. You'll have to lift up on this boot. There's a connector underneath it. And what I use is I use a flat screwdriver or a pick, and I just reach down in there and push the tab and then pull up. But this boot actually, it goes into the cylinder head. It kind of has a groove in the side of it. That's all there is to it. And then you don't have to go replacing the whole entire valve cover because of one seal. Because that seal right there, a lot of times it'll leak right around that edge. And then guys don't want to spring for the valve cover. Like this being a used car, they want it done right to where it won't leak, but they want to try to minimize the amount of money that they put into it. So I'm at least doing it a way where the customer's not going to have a problem, because I know with this Ultra Gray, if I ever have to take this valve cover off, or somebody does in the future, all they got to do is just take a little razor blade and just run it right there along that edge, right up next to the solenoid body, just real fine. I got it so thin that as soon as you just run it one little time, breaks loose, done. Take it off, put it back together, clean it back up if you want to, put another little thin bead, or actually replace the valve cover, but there's no need for that. This is why this motor is just so simple, so easy to work on. This is the best Fusion that Ford has ever made, and the sportiest to me, the most reliable, easiest to work on. The only thing that's a pain in the butt on this thing really to work on is when you got to go put wheel bearings in it, because these are press fit wheel bearings. So the passenger front wheel bearing in this one is making a little humming noise, so I just said, you know what, I ain't even going to chance it. Let's just replace it. Do it while it's here so the customer don't have to worry about it. 3M8Z1215 Apple. And then you got a snap ring that goes along with it. That's what goes on the back side. Sometimes you can fish these out of there and clean them up and they're fine. I don't like to reuse them. I just like to put a new one in there. And these are press fit. So if you don't have a press and stuff at the house, or the big giant, you know, multiple $100 removal and an installation kit, you have to take it to a shop. And it's going to cost you about an hour and a half, because the knuckle and everything's got to be pulled off. They got to take it to the press. Everything's got to be pressed in. Then there's other ways to do it too. There's actually tools where you can do it on the vehicle. I'm actually going to do this in the press. Thanks guys. Thanks for watching. Thanks for entertaining my opinion of this being the best based on my work experience, reliability, and just overall style. This was the best Fusion they made by far. 98 to 2010 was Ford's prime year for somewhat efficiency, somewhat power, stylish looking cars. That was their best year so far. Now the new stuff is very powerful and very sporty. I can't say so much for reliability.